Glorious blue sky. It is a stunning, beautiful day here in Italy. And there you see actually applause breaking out right now, if you can hear them in the background here, for Ukraine's President Zelensky. And James, I'll let you pick up on that point. Pope Francis was quiet for a time, but not fully when it came to Russia and Ukraine, and in the end made it clear that he stood with the Ukrainian people.
This is my video update on this Saturday, April the 26th, coming to you from Paphos, Cyprus. Let's talk about some news. And we are going to start things off with the funeral of Pope Francis, which is just wrapping up from what I understand at the time of recording this video. And so many world leaders were at the funeral, including US President Trump, including Macron, and Elensky. There was a lot of doubt if Elensky was going to show up to the funeral. Yesterday, he said that he might not make it to the funeral of the Pope because he had important military meetings to take care of. But he did end up traveling to Italy, and he went to the funeral, and he did not suit up. He did not wear a suit. Everyone else wore a suit to pay their respects to Pope Francis, but Elensky decided to wear an all black outfit with what looked like a black dress shirt, but no suit and no tie from the Green Goblin. And when the funeral wrapped up, Elensky, he actually ended up getting a meeting, about a 15-minute meeting, with US President Trump. Now, before the funeral started, Elensky said that he wanted to have a mini summit. He was actually pressuring Meloni and Italy to put together a mini summit with Ukraine, the United States, UK, Germany, France, and Italy. A mini summit at the funeral of the Pope. That is what Elensky was asking for. What's up, buddy? How you doing? It's a hot day today, huh? Yeah, I know. It's a hot one. Stick in the shade. You'll be all right. So he didn't get the summit because obviously that's rude and inappropriate, but that's the Green Goblin for you. But what he did get is that he got a 15-minute sit down with the US president. And when I mean a 15-minute sit down, I mean a 15-minute sit down. They put two chairs opposite each other and they sat down, and from what Yermak said, they had a very constructive conversation. That is according to Elensky's entertainment lawyer, Yermak. You can see the photos of Trump sitting across from Elensky. No table, nothing, just two chairs, and the two men talking. But then there were photos that were published with Macron also at this meeting. And it does look like it was Macron that managed to put together this sit down. Because if there is one weakness that Trump has when it comes to world leaders, it's Macron, man. He has got a Macron weakness. US President Trump. Can't explain it. I don't know what it is, but he's got a liking for Macron. And when Macron asks for something, Trump delivers. So I'm sure Macron told Trump, come on, man, just sit down with Elensky. he wants to talk, and so that's what happened. Did I not say in Limassol 2-3 days ago, when the word came out that Elensky and Trump would both be going to the funeral, that Elensky's going to try and corner Trump and talk to him? That's what happened. That is exactly what happened. And so, of course, the danger to all of this is what I said many times about Trump. The last person to talk to Trump is usually going to dictate the next statements, maybe even the next policy that Trump comes up with. So in the next day or two, expect Trump to say some very complimentary things about Elensky and some very bad or nasty things about Putin and Russia. It's just a guess, but very possible. Of course, there are other reports. There are other reports which say that Trump sat down with Elensky and he told Elensky to accept his peace plan, which Elensky has rejected. Many, many times he has rejected the peace plan that Trump put together. Ukraine, the EU, and UK, they put together their own peace plan. I talked about this a couple of days ago as well in Limassol, and they put it on Trump's desk. Reuters got a copy of this peace plan, and they published it. They also have a copy of the Trump peace plan, which is more of a framework for negotiations and for an agreement with the conflict in Ukraine. But Reuters also published that as well. If you want a very good, detailed breakdown of both plans, then I will put a link to Alexander's video from yesterday. He goes into it in detail, point by point, and goes over the two different proposals. And so I will talk a bit about these two different proposals. The one is the framework from the US, and the other is the UK, EU, Ukraine plan, which is more of terms delivered to Russia. It's capitulation terms that they're delivering to Russia. That's really the best way to describe the Ukraine, UK, EU plan. We're getting reports, before I get into the plan, we're getting reports from the Washington Post that Macron and some other Western leaders, well, Kiev backers, I won't say Macron, but I think that's who the Washington Post is talking about, maybe even Stammer as well, maybe even Germany, who knows, but Kiev backers are pushing Elensky to go ahead and recognize the U.S. recognition, de jure recognition of Crimea. You got that? They're telling Elensky to just go ahead and accept or allow the United States of America, Elensky, allow the United States of America to recognize Crimea as part of Russia. They're framing that as some sort of a concession or something to Russia. And they're saying Elensky might be willing to go ahead with this. Kiev backers pushing Elensky toward land concessions. European officials believe that Ukraine may be willing to endure acknowledgement of Moscow's control over Crimea, the report says. Yeah, the Washington Post says as long as Ukraine is not forced or doesn't have to recognize Crimea, de jure, de facto, then maybe Elensky will allow the United States to recognize Crimea. Misdirection, man. Misdirection. That's what this whole Crimea thing is. A concession that Russia never asked for, and they're now packaging it as some sort of big concession being made to Russia. All right, so let's go into the two proposals, and let's start with. And these were published by Reuters. Let's start with the Ukrainian and European peace deal counterproposals to the U.S. at talks in London. That is how Reuters frames the surrender terms that will be delivered to Russia. That's what this is all about. Surrender terms that will be delivered to Russia. And what was going to happen in London, at least we have some understanding as to what the Europeans and Ukraine, what they were hoping was going to happen in London last week. They were hoping that Rubio and Witkoff would come to London and that they would present this document to the United States, and that Rubio and Witkoff and Kellogg would be cool with it, and they would take it back to Trump, and they would say, okay, this is the proposal that Witkoff is then going to take to Russia, and this is what we're going to tell Russia to agree to. So they were hoping in London that the U.S. would attend in full force, and that they would get the United States to go along with this plan. Of course, that did not happen. Rubio bailed out. Witkoff bailed out. Rumor has it even Kellogg bailed out. But anyway, they decided to leak this to Reuters, or to give this to Reuters, and Reuters has now published these surrender terms to Russia. Russia, here are your surrender terms. Here are your capitulation papers, documents. First time in history, the party that is winning the conflict is being presented with capitulation papers. First time in history. But there you have it. We do live in interesting times. And we're going to walk around here. We are going to walk around this area. But let me get in the shade, actually. Let me get in the shade here and read you a bit about what Reuters published. So let's see here. The Ukraine and European peace deal. So with the ceasefire, it's broken up into different parts. So there's one part, which is the ceasefire, which says that all parties have to agree to an unconditional ceasefire in the sky, on land, and at sea. Unconditional ceasefire, okay. And then it says that the ceasefire is going to be monitored by the United States and supported by third countries, whatever that even means. But the United States is going to monitor the ceasefire, and there's going to be talks that are going to begin once there's an unconditional ceasefire. And those talks will be between the United States, Europe, Ukraine, and on the opposite side of the table will be Russia. Both sides immediately enter into negotiations on technical implementation with the participation of the U.S. and European countries. This is in parallel to preparation of the agenda and modalities for a full peace deal. So basically, it would be the collective West with the United States entering into talks once you have an unconditional ceasefire with Russia. That sounds fair. That sounds real fair. They're dictating the terms. They're going to sit down with Russia and they want to dictate the terms, right? That's what this is saying. Then it talks about security guarantees, and it basically says that as long as there are NATO member states that are still not sure about Ukraine entering the alliance, for example, Hungary. Let's just say Hungary is one country that is not sure if Ukraine should enter NATO. That Ukraine will still receive Security 5 guarantees. So it's part of NATO without actually having to be voted on by all the countries to enter NATO. And it gets the Security 5 guarantees. It also gets the protection of the United States. The United States would be the main country providing security for Ukraine. And it also says that there will be no restrictions on Ukraine's military. No restrictions at all. As big military as they want, as many weapons as they want. They are allowed to build up their military. What else does it say? Ukraine will be allowed to pursue accession to the European Union. The guarantor states will be an ad hoc group of European countries and willing non-European countries. No restrictions on the presence of weapons and operations of friendly foreign forces on the territory of Ukraine. Right. So the other thing that Ukraine gets is that they will have the British and the UK and other foreign militaries allowed to go to Ukraine as much as they want, whenever they want, and set up their bases and all of those things. On territory, this is the interesting part. of this document. On territory, they don't get into any details. They say they will discuss the territory later. So you got that as Ukraine builds up its military, as the UK and France and all of these collective West countries move into Ukraine, as they get Article 5 protection, as they get all of these things going into Ukraine, then at a later date, they'll discuss territory. Yeah, I don't think they're looking to discuss territory. I think they're looking to build up so they could go back to war with Russia. That's what they're thinking of doing. But the one thing that Ukraine does get is they get the ZNPP. So they will get the ZNPP. That goes fully into Ukraine's hands. So Russia gives up the ZNPP. On economics, the Russian frozen assets are going to be used to reconstruct Ukraine. Ukraine is going to enter into a minerals agreement with the United States as well. And the U.S. is going to be allowed, get this, the U.S. will be allowed to ease up on sanctions that it first imposed in 2014. Not the EU, not the collective West, not the UK, not Canada, no, not Japan, none of these countries, Australia. The U.S. will be allowed to ease its sanctions on Russia. All the other sanctions will remain. If the U.S. wants to ease the sanctions, they will be allowed. They have the permission of the other collective West countries. Is this a capitulation document for Russia? But it also seems like it's a capitulation for the United States. That's what it feels like. Anyway, that's the document that I'm sure the Russians, and I'm sure you watching this video as well, is going to get a good laugh out of, because it's a ridiculous piece of paper. Now let's go to the document from the U.S., which is very much a framework type of deal. It actually says it, Russia-Ukraine deal framework. So this is something that's meant to lead to more negotiations and more discussions. And when it comes to ceasefire, it just says there will be a permanent ceasefire and that both sides, Ukraine and Russia, will engage in talks. Not Ukraine, the US, the EU, UK on one side and Russia on the other. Nope. The document says ceasefire, and then Ukraine and Russia, you have to talk. So that's one big difference. When it comes to security guarantees, it just says that Ukraine will receive robust security guarantee, whatever that means. Guarantor states will be an ad hoc grouping of European states plus willing non-European states. So notice the United States is not there. Ukraine will not seek to join NATO. So no NATO for Ukraine. I'm not sure how they're going to enforce this, but that will come up in the negotiations. At least the document says that there will be no NATO for Ukraine. I'm sure if you were going to negotiate on this framework, Russia would provide the mechanisms to enforce Ukraine not ever being able to enter NATO. But it does say that Ukraine may pursue EU membership. I don't know. The EU membership thing, I'm not for it. Who am I, though? Who am I? I'm just a guy with a camera walking around talking about the news. But, the EU is kind of like having one foot in NATO. When you're in the European Union, it's like you have one foot in NATO. But who knows? Maybe for Russia, maybe they see Ukraine into NATO as a way to speed up the Ukraine into the EU. Ukraine into the EU. Maybe they see it as a way for it to speed up the end of the European Union, right? The demise of the EU. If you get Ukraine into the EU, then the EU will collapse a lot quicker. Maybe that's how they'll see it. But to be fair, Russia never did say that they would block Ukraine entering the EU. They never did specifically state that as part of their terms. Anyway, that's in there. When it comes to territory, it says that the U.S. will recognize Crimea de jure. Russia never asked for it, but it's in there. It says that the U.S. will recognize Lugansk, Zaporozhye, and Donetsk de facto, and Kherson. So it'll recognize all of those territories de facto, but not the entirety, just up to where the contact line is, where the fighting will be frozen. they will recognize those parts. So that goes against the Russian constitution. Russia will never accept this. And they will give up Kharkov, Russia, whatever progress they've made at Kharkov, they will return that back to Ukraine. Okay. Not sure if the Russians would go for that. And when it comes to the Zaporozhye power plant, it would go back to Ukraine, but the U.S. would manage it. And the U.S. would make sure that the ZNPP provided energy to both sides, to the Russian-controlled side and to the Ukraine-controlled side. So it would be under Ukraine ownership, but the U.S. would be managing the plant and making sure that all people in the region on both sides got energy from the plant. When it comes to economics, what does this thing say? This document say? They talk about the minerals deal. They talk about compensating Ukraine, but they don't get into any details. They just say Ukraine to be fully reconstructed and compensated financially. Okay. On sanctions, it says that sanctions on Russia resulting from this conflict since 2014 will be removed. So I take that as meaning all sanctions, U.S. and European and collective West. All the sanctions are removed. That's a big win for Russia. They never asked for it, but they would have all of the sanctions removed. Of course, the European Union, they've already turned this down. They said, no way are we going to remove sanctions. And I think that's it. U.S.-Russian economic cooperation on energy and other industrial sectors. Okay, so the last bullet point is that the U.S. and Russia are going to start doing business together. That's the Witkoff contribution to this document, right? That's the Witkoff contribution, that we start doing business, the U.S. and Russia. Look, this is a document that the U.S. document, the U.S. plan is something that Russia cannot accept. It's something that the Europeans and Ukraine will definitely not accept. But the Russians are going to have a hard time accepting this plan. But I will say this. If you gave this, say, 6 months, maybe six months to a year, let's say, of negotiations, then you could probably move this towards Istanbul Plus, this plan. I'm sure that Russia could move it over time to Istanbul Plus. They could tell the Trump administration, look, all of the territories, the 4 territories, not from where the line is frozen, all of the 4 territories. Of course, in a year, the Russians are going to continue to advance anyway. But you could definitely move the U.S. side towards this Istanbul Plus with this as say, a starting point from Trump's side of things. Which is why Lavrov and many Russian officials have said, when they looked at this document, they said, look, we can work with this. We're not going to accept this. It's it's a bit of a crazy plan, but over time, we could probably bring the U.S. towards June 2024 if you look at this plan. So anyway, those are the 2 plans. Ukraine, the Foreign Ministry of Ukraine, actually came out with a statement, and they humiliated Trump in the United States again. They humiliated Trump, and they said that Crimea and all occupied territories are Ukraine. Their loss will never be recognized. Ukraine's armed forces and defense industry are not subject to any restrictions, and Ukraine will not accept any veto on its NATO membership. So they basically came out with a statement, and they said, we are getting into NATO. We don't care what you say, Trump. We're going to build up our military. We don't care what you say, Trump. And we're never going to recognize Crimea. We don't care what you say, Trump. And now it looks like, according to the Washington Post, that the Europeans are trying to get Ukraine to at least be flexible on the Crimea part. How nice of them. So anyway, that's the news there. Elensky also said that he demands from the collective West, from the United States is who he's talking about, but he says Europeans as well. He demands security, money, weapons, forever. Forever. He said like the U.S. provides to Israel, that's what Elensky is demanding from the United States. Discussions in London have focused on security guarantees from the United States. We hope them to be at least as robust as those provided to Israel. Additionally, we anticipate support from our European partners and are actively developing the infrastructure necessary for these guarantees. Another demand from Elensky. Once again, he has taken a jab at Trump's plan, openly defying Trump's plan. So I think that's everything. How am I doing on time? Was that long? Was that a bit too long? Let's take a walk. Let's take a walk. So, what else? Trump posted some stuff on Truth Social before he went to Rome, and then when he landed in Rome. To be quite honest, I don't think it's really that important that I read you what Trump posted. I'll read you what he posted when he landed in Rome. He said, "Just landed in Rome, a good day in talks and meetings with Russia and Ukraine. They are very close to a deal, and the two sides should now meet at very high levels to finish it off. Most of the major points are agreed to. Stop the bloodshed. Now we will be wherever is necessary to help facilitate the end of this cruel and senseless war." Right. The U.S. is the mediator in all of this. So Trump gave his 100 Days interview to Time magazine, and he talked about the Russia negotiations in this 100 Days interview. He said that, of course, close to a deal and all of that stuff that we've been talking about on this channel. We're close to a deal. And he talked about Crimea and how the United States is going to recognize Crimea. And basically everything we've been talking about on this channel. That's what he said about Russia and the negotiations there. He talked about the tariff war with China, and he actually said that Xi Jinping called him. And I believe this is being disputed by China. Anyway, he said that Xi Jinping called him, or he's spoken to China. He said he has made 200 tariff deals that he's going to wrap up in 3 to 4 weeks. He said with regards to Xi, he's called, and I don't think that's a sign of weakness on his behalf. That's what Trump said. But China's foreign ministry did not immediately respond to a request for comment on Trump's statement before Trump's latest remarks were published. It had urged Washington to stop misleading the public on bilateral tariff negotiations, a comment reiterated by Beijing's embassy in Washington. So maybe he did speak with Xi Jinping. I don't know. It said that before the Time interview was published, China was saying that there was no communication, or at least China said stop misleading the public on communication that is possibly taking place between China and the United States. But I don't know, maybe after the Time interview was published, maybe they did talk. And he also talked about Iran, and he said that he's open to meeting Iran's leaders, and he does see a good possibility for a deal. So Trump said that as well. By the way, Witkoff, he is now off to Oman, where he is going to continue the negotiations on Iran. Witkoff heads to Oman for Iran nuclear deals after meeting with Putin, according to Axios. Witkoff, very busy, that Witkoff. So we had news, disturbing news, not connected to any of this geopolitics stuff, on Virginia Giuffre. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm sure everyone remembers Virginia Giuffre. Well, the reports are, this is coming from the media, that she committed suicide. The mother of three died, aged 41 in Australia, her family said. Now, the interesting part is that she posted in 2019, December 11th, I am making it publicly known that in no way, shape, or form am I suicidal. I have made this known to my therapist and GP. If something happens to me, in the sake of my family, do not let this go away and help me to protect them. Too many evil people want to see me quieted. Anyway, rest in peace, Virginia Giuffre. Do I have any clown worlds? Do I have any clown worlds? I don't have any clown worlds, to be honest. The Sun is publishing some sort of war games that took place in the UK, and they say chilling war games show Russian missiles overwhelming UK with Britain's bases blown to bits and RAF fighter jets blitzed. So all of a sudden, the Russian military is super strong, and the British military would not be able to hold up for very long against the Russian military. All of a sudden, we have this narrative shift. Before, it was shovels and washing machine chips. Now the Russian military would demolish the British military. So over there, right there, is St. Paul's Pillar, right? That is St. Paul's Pillar, and I wonder if I can get down there. I don't think, no, I can't get down there. I mean, I could go down there, but I don't think I'm allowed to go down there. A lot of people here. So St. Paul's Pillar, right there. And Paul, he came to Paphos, and the Roman governor of Paphos actually whipped Paul on that pillar, and he ordered Paul to stop preaching Christianity. That was the order that the Romans gave Paul. Stop preaching in Paphos. And so they whipped him, they beat him on that pillar, tied him to that pillar and beat him. And Paul didn't stop. He didn't stop preaching, and he actually converted the governor, Sergius Paulus, to Christianity. He made Cyprus one of the world's very early adopters of Christianity, Paul, and he did that all when he was in Paphos. Can you imagine that? 30, I read somewhere it was 39 lashes to Paul on that pillar. And they told him, stop preaching. And he didn't stop. He kept on preaching. And eventually, he got the Roman governor to become Christian. That's heroic. That's faith. That is faith right there. Not many people know about Paul's pillar here in Paphos. It's just kind of there, you know? Let me zoom in for everybody. It's just kind of there. And not many people are aware of it. Pretty amazing that Paul was here. I want to go over there and read what it says, but there's so many people there. Anyway, I will end the video, and maybe I'll just sit down here and when the tour group, I believe it's a religious, looks like it's a religious group, an Orthodox group, but maybe an Orthodox school. But I will go over there when they finish up, and I will read you what it says. All right. The Duran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, ODYSEE, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfin, and X. Go to the Duran shop, pick up some merch like what I'm wearing in this video update. The link is in the description box down below. 15% off. Use the code SPRING15. Take care. Are you guys still with me? Let's go. Let's go see what's over there. Let's start here. This is very cool. Erik Ejegod, King of Denmark, 1095 to 1103. In Bafos was buried Erik Ejegod, King of Denmark, who died suddenly on his way to the Holy Land. Pretty cool. Everyone watching in Denmark. There you go. King of Denmark, 1095 to 1103. On his way to the Holy Land. It's lunchtime for the cats. We will not disturb them. And let's go over here so you could see the site. Early Christian Basilica of Christoforou, 4th century AD. All right, I hope you enjoyed this tour, and I will see everybody tomorrow. Take care.